Dear ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, welcome to Astana Finance Day's Macroeconomic Forum 2021. My name is Robert Barnes, the Group Head of Securities Trading and the CEO of Turquoise at London Stock Exchange Group. I am delighted to moderate today's session on the role of financial centers to de-risk foreign direct investment. There is no shortage of capital to finance sustainable projects around the world. Emerging markets, however, carry a risk premium over developed countries to attract foreign direct investment. Financial centers need to contribute to reducing this premium. This session will explore the various levers and instruments that emerging markets financial centers can use to attract foreign direct investment in sectors other than extraction industries, with the objective to drive sustainable economic development. This theme is close to my heart, as I've had the privilege to travel to Nur-Sultan many times. Before the pandemic, I took part in the Astana World Mining Conference, and later I was honored to participate in the Kazakh Intergovernmental Commission meeting chaired by Samruk Kazna and Baroness Nicholson, UK Prime Minister's trade envoy to Takistan. Before we start, I wanted to share with you some thoughts as to why financial centers thrive when they connect. Every financial center is special, and many share four pillars. Number one, capital markets with stock exchanges. Two, legal arbitration and dispute resolution. Three, infrastructure and financing, with priority today on sustainable finance. And four, education, skills, and promotion. The go-to survey of many more factors is the Global Financial Centers Index published by ZYEN. What is remarkable is that the number of financial centers is growing. In 2013, the index counted 74. The most recent version, published March 2021, there are 114 international financial centers in the index. In our modern age of electronic markets and instant information worldwide, a key driver of growth is the network effect. Many know Metcalfe's law, that the value of a network scales with the square of the number of nodes. The insight, dear ladies and gentlemen, is that financial centers that connect can thrive. And with that in mind, it becomes clear why collaboration between the UK Financial Centre and AIFC over the past several years has been so productive for both centers, and together our enlarged community of issuers, investors, and intermediaries. For example, thank you to the collaboration with AIFC between AIX and London Stock Exchange. Both domestic and international investors have been able to invest in the landmark privatization of Kazatomprom, the world's largest uranium producer, which dual listed on both exchanges in 2018 at a valuation of $3 billion. Today, its market value stands at $7.5 billion. Last year, Kazakhstan's leading fintech, Kaspi, went public on both exchanges, raising $1 billion for a market capitalization of $6.5 billion. This was the largest cross-border tech IPO in London at the time. Today, Kaspi's company value nearly tripled, reaching $19.4 billion. I want to mention my colleague, Ayuna Necheva, Head of Europe, Primary Markets, and Chair of the Citi UK's Eurasia Market Advisory Group, whose leadership also helped ensure the success of these cross-border deals. And for our audience and viewers worldwide, this special panel also qualifies for CPD, Continuing Professional Development. Thank you to the Chartered Institute for Securities Investment. Dear ladies and gentlemen, it is now my privilege to introduce to you our esteemed speakers. Starting first, Dr. Kairat Kelimbetov, AIFC Governor and Chairman of the Agency of Strategic Planning and Reforms. Welcome, sir. Professor Alexander van der Voet, Chairman of Corporate Governance and Stewardship and Chief Strategy Officer, AIFC. Welcome, sir. Chris Campbell-Holt, CEO of Registrar of the AIFC Court and International Arbitration Center. Welcome, sir. And joining me from the City of London, Professor Michael Mainelli, Executive Chairman of the Zien Group, the author of the Global Center Financial Index, and Sheriff of the City of London Corporation. Dear ladies and gentlemen, let's start with a question for the Governor. Dr. Kelimbetov, what was the vision behind the creation of the Astana International Financial Center, and why now? Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much for your questions. I also would like to echo you in terms of a strong cooperation between London Stock Exchange Group and Astana International Financial Center from very beginning. And by the way, so yesterday you mentioned Kaspi Group overcome the psychological limits of $20 billion. So it was like also fantastic success for them, for Kazatomprom. So I think that the recent development just demonstrates the interest of the global investors community to Kazakhstan and to Kazakh economy, and I think this is very important for us. So just to remind you that the initiative to create Astana International Financial Center been first time announced by the first president of Kazakhstan, Nur-Sultan in 2015. Since those time, it was tremendous work been done. In July 2018, the AFC been launched. And since those time, we focus on the development of these pillars, which you mentioned. So we focus on development of capital markets, and it was in line with, in parallel with the ambitious privatization program in Kazakhstan. So the Kazatomprom is a first example. I think that we do have a upcoming further privatization of the sovereign wealth fund, Samruk-Kazyna's national companies like Kazmunaygas and many others. And we do expect probably we will make it in a partnership with the London Stock Exchange as well. Recently we brought on Astana International Exchange $320 million to the equity tools, which is a much bigger, a few times the size than it was previously in Kazakhstan. So the idea was to create it in a new leading platform, which we use NASDAQ platform technologically, but the most important, we use the common law jurisdiction. So this is very important changes. So in order to make it happen, it was even amendments to the constitution. The second was, I think that we focus also on development of human capital. So you mentioned already BCPD. So the Bureau on Continuous Professional Development is a serious instrument to develop human capital here. And since very beginning, we work with London's communities such as CFA, ACCA, CISI, with the idea to upgrade the skills of the local financiers here, to bring them to certificate them, and to create a certain pool of the people who can provide world-class services in Kazakhstan. Also, very important is focusing on the new trends like ESG, green finance, digital platforms. So this is also very much in line with our development. The most important that at the same time, like from one side, the financial center, but from the other side is also leading investment platform. So allowing to many investors to come to Kazakhstan, to the region of Central Asia, broader terms, Eurasian Economic Union. So this is something which we created within these 3 years. I hope that we succeed because we already brought more than $4.5 billion investments. So our goal till 2025 is 10 billion. So it's very much similar to the 50% of this goal. And I hope that we will continue this further development based on principles that we would like to build the latest edition financial hub, latest edition financial center based already on fourth industrial revolution technologies from one side, and committed to the ESG principle from the other side. Thank you.
Well, Governor, thank you for your leadership and thank you for this excellent foundation. So let us then come on to the role of the AIFC Court and the International Arbitration Center It's interesting to note that as financial centers grow, one would expect through the supply chain, various cordial confrontations that can sometimes run into many years. And having dispute resolution and arbitration centers can certainly make the development of a financial center far more dynamic and efficient. So what role does the AIFC Court and International Arbitration Center play specifically to create trust in the eyes of the investor? And what's been the track record thus far? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Barnes. This question really, if I may answer, is not just about a world-class dispute resolution system for investors coming to Kazakhstan through the AFC. It's about two things before we get on to investments themselves. It's about a common law, distinguished, respected, international standard common law legal infrastructure. The AFC has that. It has world-class codified common law modeled on the English legal system. It is trusted by the international legal community and the business community, and therefore will, and already I think is, proving to be very attractive to investors coming to Kazakhstan through the AFC. Supporting that is protecting the rights of investors, and that is done through our common law, English common law style commercial court, chaired by Lord Mance, the former Vice President of the United Kingdom Supreme Court, supported by world-class names, most respected, trusted names from the English judiciary with international experience, and by our International Arbitration Centre, chaired by Barbara Doman QC and her 39-strong international standard, highly respected and trusted arbitrators. Trust is so important. When we speak to investors, and at the AFC we all speak to investors all the time through our everyday work in various ways, the question we typically get is, well, if I want to, how can you protect me and my friends, my shareholders, my investor colleagues? If I bring my money to Kazakhstan or to any country, what's in it for me? What am I going to get back? Am I going to get the results that you've promised, you've guaranteed in law? And if there are problems along the way, and unfortunately in everyday investment business practices, there will from time to time be some problems, can I have that interest and right protected? Will it be done independently, impartially, without being corrupted, and can I guarantee that my rights will be protected in the international way, applying the rule of law? The answer is yes. Our track record has been strong so far, despite still being in our, I would say, early stages, early years of development. The Court and Arbitration Centre have successfully resolved a total of 536 cases, consisting of court judgments, arbitration awards, and mediation settlement agreements. A lot of these cases have involved investors. Some are new or connected or subcontractors of investors operating within the AIFC and within Kazakhstan, and indeed the wider Central Asia region. So that trust has been delivered immediately because of the independence we can guarantee through the common law, through our Chief Justice, Chairman, judges, arbitrators, mediators, our world-class administration at both the Court and Arbitration Centre for quick, cost-effective dispute resolution, and frankly, by our results. We have achieved a very high case number. All of those cases, where necessary, have been enforced to 100% satisfaction within the entire territory of Kazakhstan, not just Nur-Sultan or Almaty, throughout the entire country. And that is hugely important as a first pointer for investors to show them that not if, but when, and when they continue to invest through the AFC in Kazakhstan, they will be protected. They will get what they bargained for in law. After that, we expect some more questions to come about the specifics of investments, and our job is, with what I do, is to protect those investor rights.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for that excellent explanation. And allow us to now move on to our next question. Kazakhstan has historically relied on attracting FDI towards the extraction industries. Will this continue, or are there some factors in the external environment that warrant change? Professor.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Governor.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right that Kazakhstan is now leading economy in the region of Central Asia or in the former Soviet Union area. So we brought billions of dollars investment to Kazakhstan, mostly in oil and gas or mining industries, which allow us to be in terms of GDP per capita on the second place in all Eurasian countries. But at the same time, I think that since the very beginning, we try to diversify our economy. And one of the ideas is also to make really favorable investment climate, not only for oil and gas, but also for many other industries. So we have promising industries like food processing, agriculture sector, tourism, processing industries. And in 2015, like I mentioned, it was announced the program which called 100 concrete steps towards 5 institutional reform, which been continued by the National Development Plan till 2025. So the idea is focus on priority sectors in Kazakhstan, bring investors in those sectors, global investors. But idea was to create familiar and reliable legal and regulatory regime to them. That's why the government established a special regime which called strategic investment agreements, which is provide opportunities for those investors who invest more than $50 million, and they can get an opportunity also to get a presence in Astana International Financial Center. So since very beginning, we've been part of the government kind of idea to create best climate, like you already mentioned, having capital markets platform, having dispute resolution authorities platform, and also focusing on development of the new technologies, which is allow to Kazakhstan to leapfrog to the new destination in terms of the such ideas like data-driven government, fourth industrial revolution, applications to the industrial development. So all of this stuff are key ingredients of the existing model of Astana International Financial Center. And the key idea is to de-risk investment, actually provide familiar regime, provide guarantees, provide trust, confidence for the investors. If they will invest through AIFC platform and they will invest to Kazakhstan, they will get the clear rules of the work. And I think that Kazakhstan succeed on this recently, and we hope that the next 30 years Kazakhstan will focus on the let's say improving this work with the global investors community. And we have very ambitious goals in terms of the further development.
Well, Governor, thank you. In fact, I had the pleasure recently of reading a fascinating book that you co-authored, Leapfrogging Sustainability, that was published jointly with the Chartered Institute for Securities Investments in association with the Astana International Financial Center. And what I found fascinating was very clear that in our modern world, it is maybe possible to go one step jump to become state-of-the-art. I wonder if you could share a bit of color and a few insights. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I think what is kind of clear in terms of the megatrends, which we do have now seen globally, and especially for countries like Kazakhstan, oil-rich countries. So we have to understand that the commodities, few trends, which is very much important for the understanding how to develop further our economy. So one is that the commodities super cycle is over. So we rely previous decades of the high price of oil for the factor of, let's say, development of the oil and gas sector. Now we do understand that we should realize that tremendous changes in this area. The other one is development of the decarbonization trend globally, and especially to our important trade partners for Kazakhstan, European Union, which is 50% of the our global trade, or China, which is 20% of our trade, are very much committed to the ESG principles. It means that we now should figure out that the ESG principles should be part of our financial regulation, should be part of our development of the industry, should be part of our environment legislation. By the way, just yesterday, it was launching of the new law in Kazakhstan, Environment Code, which is very much committed to the ESG principle. Just remind you that Kazakhstan is committed to Paris Agreement on climate change. So we expect that our President Tokayev would be important figure in the upcoming Glasgow conference of COP26. And in these terms, I think that very much important that AIFC also would be like a driver and also national champion on the development of this agenda. The fourth industrial revolution, another trend, which you mentioned, absolutely correct, that allow us to leapfrog in certain destinations, like, for example, satellite internet or AI using in financial area, blockchain, data analytics, data-driven government. So all of these trends also can help Kazakhstan to leapfrog. And just 2 hours before we sign a final agreement, and we launched the affiliated center of the fourth industrial revolution of World Economic Forum, first ever in Central Asia. So we hope that this is also allow us to use these new technologies for the further development. And I think the clock speed is, or velocity of the change is now accelerating. And we should all understand that the pandemic only accelerates all of these changes, and we have to be flexible enough. We have to be, so in certain terms, anti-fragile to all of these shocks, and we have to prepare ourselves, our system, our human capital. And I think that Kazakhstan understanding very well all these trends, and I think our response is properly structured. Thank you.
Well, Governor, thank you very much, and congratulations on signing the World Economic Forum Agreement. Congratulations, sir. Professor Van de Putte, may I also invite you to maybe share some insights also as a co-author of this remarkable book, Leapfrogging Sustainability.
Thank you very much, Dr. Barnes. And let me build upon some of the comments that the governor has made. Markets internalize externalities, and the governor has emphasized some of these externalities: global climate change, the end of the commodity supercycle, the emergence of the fourth industrial revolution, and others. Let me also emphasize another one is actually the rising level of inequality. So with our book, which is called Leapfrogging Sustainability, in essence, we wanted to really say leapfrogging sustainability, inclusive and resilient economic growth. But of course, that title would have been too long. Now, how do we try to do that in Kazakhstan and through the AIFC? It's through our strategic directions. And we actually articulated 3 strategic directions. They're also in the book, and I would encourage people to have a look at it. It's freely available in PDF format, by the way. So number 1 is that we need to extend the competitive advantage period of the extraction industries. And the way to do that is actually by leveraging the circular economy. That's number 1. Number 2 is that we also need to invest massively in both physical and digital infrastructure. In the future, we will see a lot of digital enabled trade. We're already seeing it today, in essence. And number 3 is that we need to leverage the fourth industrial revolution in order to make the One Belt, One Road, but also the Eurasian Renewable Energy Internet a reality. And let me emphasize the last aspect that I just mentioned, the Eurasian Renewable Energy Internet. With Professor Mainelli a couple of weeks ago, and with Dr. Chung, the Nobel Prize winner of Peace, when he was the chairman of the IPCC, we had actually a panel on exactly that discussion. And it was very clear that this has enormous potential, not only for sustainable growth, but also for resilient growth. The current way that supply chains work, the current way that our energy system works is far from resilient. One example that I cite often, since actually it happened a few months ago, is when a single container ship blocked 12% of global trade to a standstill. And it took for 6 days, and it took more than 1 month to free the backlog. So it clearly shows that our current system is not only sustainable, it's definitely not inclusive, but also it's not resilient. So what we're trying to do actually through the AIFC is contribute to all 3, and with the objective to become a $1 trillion economy by 2040. And I truly believe that it's possible. but we will have to focus on all three areas simultaneously. And back to you, Dr. Barnes.
Well, thank you, Professor. I mean, I think that brings us nicely into our next topic, which are small, medium enterprises. In many countries like the UK and Europe, they are the engine of growth and employment. SMEs in Kazakhstan and other developing countries are responsible for a relatively small share of the economy today. How can the AIFC stimulate entrepreneurship and the creation of SMEs?
Thank you. I think very much important that in AFC, we created a good combination of two subsystems, which kind of create an opportunity for forming new clusters. So from one side, we have a presence of the traditional financial institutions, like banking community, insurance community, investment companies. And from the other side, we do have a new tech startups community. So we in different areas important for Kazakhstan, like agrotech, green tech, like legal tech, fintech. You mentioned Kaspi is one of the pioneering fintech group, which is dramatically. And when we have this opportunity for clustering them, I mean, when those new ideas can be, let's say, used by the traditional institutions, and these two subsystems enrich each other. So this is something which within the key idea of creation of Astana International Financial Center. So having a privilege, be youngest financial center globally, having a privilege to be kind of the latest edition of the financial centers, we try to bring combination of the approach to leapfrog to the new technologies from one side, and from the other side to have a prudent financial regulation of the traditional, in traditional terms. So I think in these terms, we are very much excited of our joint cooperation with ZEN Index, which is helping us and navigating us where is our strong or weak part and how we should improve our work. We are very much proud that we joined recently to the Global Green Finance Index. This is also the very important features of our development. A few years ago, we created the Center for Green Finance. We created FinTech Hub. We created also the Bureau for Continuous Professional Development. So these are all the good ingredients for the creating in the future opportunities for the small companies to evolve and to start to contribute to the Kazakh economy.
Well, Governor, thank you very much. I think that brings us nicely onto a question for Professor and Sheriff Mainelli. Based on your experience as chairman of the ZEN Group, what role have other emerging markets financial centers played to attract FDI? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Barnes. It's an interesting situation that I think what other financial centers have done quite successfully has been really three areas: stability, very much competition, which is a subtle point I'd like to come to, and connectivity. And I think as you were talking, Robert, you outlined capital markets, legal and regulatory, infrastructure, education, and skills. We track over 130 such factors, but I completely agree with your summary. That's a very good summary. And I think when you're looking at this, a financial center has an important role to play. So the first thing is to note how far Astana and AIFC and Nur-Sultan have come in just a few years, rising from lower down the ranks into the middle of the ranks. And that's been a very, very impressive showing. And that's been important as well, because what's been going on is we've been seeing increasing stability. So Chris spoke about the stability of actually having a legal and regulatory regime. I know that there's been tremendous work done on the education and skills, the capital markets and the education, and all of that has been really vital. So stability is the first thing. I think the second thing is competition. It's very, very important, particularly in small countries, and you were talking earlier about SMEs. There's got to be a competitive environment so they can get in. If it's too dominated by larger players, that's not very helpful. But of course, what's been going on brilliantly in the AIFC has been developing a capital market that can fund these small firms that can get into the mining industries and extraction industries or into the energy industries. And I think the third thing that we're looking at here is connectivity. So it may seem a bit funny for people who are involved in the AIFC to be writing a book on leapfrogging sustainability. Not at all. That's brilliant. What they're doing is laying out a roadmap for the economy and showing where this can go, and basically leading the firms in their ecosystem out into the wider world. The second thing, and I know LSCG has done this over many, many years, has been getting in with the business and not talking just about finance, but talking about the business and making those international connections. Because as you do in London, Robert, you're out there selling constantly around the world your ecosystem, and AIFC has risen to that as well with events such as today. So I think this ability of gaining connectivity is there because the Metcalfe's law applies equally to the development of the businesses, as it does to the success of the financial center, because the financial center is only there to support the businesses, to connect with the real economy. And I think we've seen some really good examples of where the connectivity is coming from. So we have the Belt Road Initiative. We could look to the example of the Toronto in mining and see that there are parallels here with AIFC. So I think AIFC has a lot to contribute to the development of Kazakhstan, the development of sustainability, to the development of the SMEs, and it's all back to stability, promoting competition, and connectivity.
Well, Professor Mainelli, thank you very much for those insights. Allow me maybe to bring in Chris Campbell-Holt. It's perhaps on the same question, but perhaps through the perspective of you working with a parallel financial center, the Qatar Financial Center. What role have these other centers played in trying to attract FDI, and what have been some of the factors that have enabled this? Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Barnes. There are, as someone today during the Astana Finance Days has already established, very many international financial centers around the world during this webinar. There are key factors which will be inherent with most successful international financial centers without going into too much detail. Integrity, building a safe regulatory environment in which investors feel comfortable to invest. Building trust at all levels of the ecosystem of the so-called investment hub through a financial center. Providing legitimate opportunities for investors which satisfy shareholders and provide the opportunity on an ease of doing business basis, a realizable return. What's the point doing business for the sake of it unless you're going to make some realizable profit, whatever that profit is, in whatever shape or form it takes, reputation, finance, and the rest of it. And what are those results? The AFC, if I may say so, has developed a quite incredible infrastructure and ecosystem with all the training and expertise that is required to attract the right investors to a country such as Kazakhstan. Qatar did exactly the same, but it did it many years ago. The AFC has come to this world at a later stage, but has drawn on the benefits, the experiences of other international financial centres in various forms, not least with its law, its common law, English common law, its dispute resolution system, which of course is my expertise area. And now it's doing it with investments as well, sometimes in a unique way for Kazakhstan. So there are lots of factors which other centres have proven that are successful for attracting investment. I believe personally that the AFC is doing that, or is doing better in many ways than some of these other centres.
Well, thank you very much, sir. I think what's fascinating as you go on about integrity and the safe regulatory environment, I mean, even in London, the motto of London Stock Exchange Group, dictum meum pactum, which is Latin for my word is my bond. I think what's fascinating around the world is that even if we speak different languages, come from different cultures, if we share the same principles, we can do solid business together. So I thank you for that, sir. So let's come to the next question. And I'd like to perhaps ask for some examples. How do we de-risk FDI projects through the AIFC to contribute to sustainable development of Kazakhstan? Governor, thank you.
I think I would like to echo to Chris. So we already in a huge process of inviting the global investors to particularly industries, including oil and gas and including agriculture sector. So they're actually benefiting from the already existing legal infrastructure in terms of the norms and standards of the common law jurisdiction. So they put in their contract already, for example, Tengizchevroil, which is an affiliated company to Chevron, is put in already in their own contracts, which are operational contracts. I think the rest of the investors community among major companies in oil and gas industry is also going to use this legal platform of AIFC. So this is, I think, very important evidence that we are on the right way. The second one is that I think that leading capital markets platform in the region from one side, and from the other side, having the best investment climate environment among the other countries in Central Asia, but also the kind of unique jurisdiction within the Kazakhstan legislation, I think is also particularly, we have a concrete case when the big investors already are coming and putting in the special agreements with the government, using the AIFC legislation and AIFC marketplace and AIFC mechanism for structuring the companies through us. So this is very good examples. Again, I mentioned that more than $4 billion investment just recently, last 3 years, and more than $1 billion investment through the capital markets platform, and also investment to the infrastructure development, to the connectivity projects, including which is Professor Mainelli mentioned, the Belt and Road initiatives. So this is all already done, but this is just the beginning of this process, and we targeted much more investment, and we hope that our movement towards de-risking investment platform in Kazakhstan will continue, and we bring the new ideas how to improve it even better. Thank you.
Thank you, Governor. Professor Van der Ploeg, may I bring you into the conversation to also share your insights? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Barnes. I was going to say no, you can't, but obviously I'm not going to do that for you, nor to our esteemed panel. I would be happy to. Remember our strategic direction. So, for example, that we should invest massively in both physical and digital infrastructure. So, one example could be in physical infrastructure. Let's say the investment in a solar farm. Let's say a $100 million investment in a solar farm in Kazakhstan. Well, first of all, what we can do through AFSA, our regulator, we can structure this and register this project through a special purpose vehicle. So we can not only register financial institutions, but also we can actually register projects. Automatically, it would also have access to our International Court and Arbitration Center, and I will say a little bit more about that later on. Now, let's say that initially this is a 100% equity investment. Therefore, its cost of capital would be relatively high. So what we can do is actually for eligible projects, and this would probably meet eligibility criteria, we can issue a green bond, or we can also issue an Islamic bond. We can even involve multilateral banks, and the issuance of a green or an Islamic bond can happen through our international exchange, AIX. Therefore, we optimize the capital structure of this project and reducing the cost of capital, making it more interesting for foreign investors. As Chris already emphasized earlier on, it's important to build trust and also to make sure that investors have access to an independent and impartial court. So that actually adds to the de-risking of foreign direct investment projects. But there's more to it. As you know, by working at the London Stock Exchange Group, an SPV can be securitized, and therefore it can potentially be listed on our exchange. In other words, we can use it as a growth vehicle and attract more financing from equity markets, not only contributing to the liquidity on AIX, but also further allowing the SPV to grow beyond its initial intent. And then finally, and equally important, I would say, is that foreign investors, they can actually repatriate their profits. So they don't have to keep it in the country, but actually they can repatriate, sorry for my stumbling here, their profits. Now, by doing so, we actually not only contribute to our mission, which is driving sustainable, inclusive, and resilient economy, but at the same time, we also contribute to shareholder value creation of those companies that are interested in investing in Kazakhstan through the AIFC. Let me make a small comment about also the inclusiveness. If we have people working in coal mining, their jobs are not going to be high paying. Also, there's limited or no social promotion for them. And also, these jobs are not very healthy. On the other hand, if they would be employed in the new economy, so to speak, leveraging many of the aspects that the governor has highlighted before, fourth industrial revolution, and so on, they would have many of the benefits that that the mining sector, for example, does not provide. Therefore, what is critically important is basically upskilling. Yesterday, we had a panel on making sure that the people currently employed also keep relevant skills going forward. And based on a report of the McKinsey Global Institute, we actually had a senior partner of McKinsey, Jochen Bergner, on the panel. And he said, well, initially, the fourth industrial revolution will destroy some jobs. But over time, actually, it will increase significantly more jobs than we currently have. And there are two aspects of it. First of all, the reason why it initially will destroy some jobs, because it will take time to make sure nobody is left behind. So that basically we reskill and retrain those that are going to participate in the new economy. And at the same time, we create opportunities, especially for younger people, including Gen Z, in order to be part of that new economy as well. So it's not just about sustainability, it's also about inclusive growth. And we owe that to the people of Kazakhstan and in essence of people around the world as well, to create true opportunities for them, and the AIFC can help contribute to that as well. Back to you, Dr. Barnes.
Well, Professor, thank you very much. So as we come to the conclusion of our panel, I'm going to invite each of our distinguished thought leaders to share their final takeaway thoughts for our global audience. And I will, just to prepare in the order, I'll go first to Professor Mainelli, then to Chris Campbell-Holt, then to Professor van der Putte, and of course, leaving the final word to our great leader, Governor Kelimbetov. So if I may go to Professor Mainelli, and we're thinking about the role of financial centers de-risking foreign direct investment projects, I also wanted to comment on the great joint report that was also just published in May of 2021, entitled All Eyes on Nur-Sultan. And it also had a fabulous webinar also with your good self, Professor van der Putte, which I found an absolute masterclass. So Professor Mainelli, maybe you could share your final takeaway thoughts for our global audience. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Dr. Barnes. I can provide, I guess, mostly an outside-in perspective, and I've certainly been chatting with investors looking at Nur-Sultan and Kazakhstan, particularly in the mining and extraction sector. Ultimately, investors from abroad need to find the projects in the first place, and AIFC is promoting that. Then they need the mechanisms to invest. Then they need to bring it as a project or as an investment to a successful conclusion. And then finally, they need to get their money out. And I think we've spoken about all those. And I would just point to three things. One, it's about the long term, particularly in mining and extraction, where you're spending, and revenue is very well down the way. So you have to have trust in the stability, as I mentioned earlier. The second thing is that you need a tremendous amount of flexibility in that process. And again, a financial center under a nice rules-based system and common law gives you that base. But there will be snags. There are always snags. And as Chris was mentioning, there are some 500 snags in the last few years, and they can be snags. These disputes need to be worked through. I think the biggest thing that we haven't spoken about today is skills. Once you've invested in something, you pay attention to it. Money attracts attention, and you stay on top of those projects, and you make sure that they come to fruition. Because of that, you inject a lot of foreign expertise, and that foreign expertise is joint. It's we're working together on a mining project. I now bring all the mining skills I've had from around the world into Kazakhstan, and this is effectively the cross-pollination of the world. And I think that's what the AIFC will do. And I admire what's been going on in terms of providing leadership in the direction and the building of a sustainable economy.
Well, Professor Mainelli, I thank you very much for your kind thoughts and insights. Chris Campbell-Holt, to you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Barnes. And if I may echo everything, of course, that Professor Mainelli has just said, and I'll be very brief and add only one or two very short points of my own, if I may. Echoing what I've said already, what I think we've all said collaboratively during this webinar, trust and confidence is absolutely critical. Without that, there will not be investment, or there'll be significantly less investment, and the potential of Kazakhstan from an investor's perspective will not be realized. So we will have to work very hard together to build, for many years, that trust and confidence. The AFC, in my view, has already done that, and it's done it extremely quickly, far quicker in every regard, I would say, whether it's the legal system, the dispute resolution system, the bankable investment projects at the AFC is assisting investors to access and to invest in and realize profitable returns, the education, and overall making doing business in Kazakhstan through the AFC as the platform as easy and trustworthy and flexible as possible for investors. We do all of that, as other centres, all centres are trying to do, but I really believe the AFC is uniquely doing, especially in this wide Central Asia region. And we mustn't forget the enormous impact that the AFC is, and I believe will continue to have, perhaps more so in the future, for this entire region as the central investment hub in Kazakhstan at the AFC. So there are so many factors there of great importance. For me, it all boils down to the trust and confidence and doing everything we can to make doing business as simple and trustworthy as possible.
Well, Chris Campbell-Holt, those messages of integrity and ease of doing business because of trust and confidence come through loud and clear. Thank you, sir. Now let me invite our distinguished Professor Alexander van de Putte for some final thoughts. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Barnes. I'm going to use an acronym that I've become known for. It's called TINA. There is no alternative. To contribute to sustainable, inclusive, and a resilient society in Kazakhstan. The AIFC is the window to the Kazakh economy, and we have a lot to offer to derisk FDI projects. Thank you.
Professor, thank you very much for your inspiration. And now let me come to our great leader and great inspiring speaker, the Governor, Dr. Kelimbetov. Thank you, sir.
Thank you for these opportunities to conclude today's session. I would like to echo to my previous speakers. So with the idea, yes, the AIFC is a gateway to invest to Kazakhstan and to the region of Central Asia. And I think a few dimensions which is reflecting to your thoughts which have been said today. So one is we're really thinking about how to simplify the life of investors. For example, in oil and gas industry, where we do have a very good legislation and favorable investment climate, we now working jointly with oil and gas community to build new model contracts, which would be clear understanding how to invest to Kazakhstan to develop new oil and gas fields in Kazakhstan. So this is very important dimensions of our work in Kazakhstan for the government. Number two is Professor Mainelli mentioned about the opportunities to build something like Toronto Junior Mining Platform in a mining industry. And I think two very important dimensions of this development. One is Kazakhstan recently approved new legislation on code on mining, which is allowed to bring the Canadian and Australian standards in mining industry, which is acceptably globally. And from one side, and from the other side, we, based on Astana International Exchange, now building the Eurasian Junior Mining Platform, which is allow us to bring investors from one side and issuers from the area around Kazakhstan, which is quite rich in terms of the mining opportunities to invest to the mining industry. And number three is stability. I mentioned that we built the new investment regime, which we call strategic investment agreements, and that allow us to any investors actually to provide tax and law stability. And I think that AIFC can be key ingredients of this execution of these new instruments, and we do believe that we succeed on the further development of Kazakhstan in general, and particularly on progress in AIFC development. Thank you very much.
Well, Governor, thank you very much. That is the excellent way to finish this stimulating panel. And may I say personally, from the center of my heart, as a humble practitioner and a great student, what a fantastic case study the AIFC is. We hear the ability to have simplicity, stability, sustainability, the trust and confidence that all has been delivered. In fact, AIFC that has been delivering well ahead of expectation, the integrity, innovation, partnership and excellence, building trust, best standards, access to the impartial court, focus on human capital, the full suite of capital markets investments for investors to participate and have the confidence to come in and out of the markets. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we've had an absolutely fascinating panel. On behalf of myself and my helpers, George Littlejohn of the Chartered Institute of Securities and Investments, and Ayuna Necheva of the London Stock Exchange, from all of us here live from the City of London, we gratefully thank our Governor, Dr. Kairat Kelimbetov of the AIFC, Professor Alexander van der Putte, Chris Campbell-Holt, and Professor Michael Mainelli for sharing their insights that are highly relevant. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Barnes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.